Hello and welcome to After Hours, UTC Zero Edition. Because here in the United States, in the GMT -5 to -7 part of the world, it is late afternoon. But for those of you over in the EU and Africa and beyond, it is evening, it is after hours, and we are happy to come to you and share your Friday night. I am joined today by two of my favorite scientists and science communicators, Dr. Kimerly Arcand and Megan Watzke. They are authors. They are people who understand light in ways all of you should be understanding light, and they've used their words and their images to share that out. And they have a new book that is justification for this show. Why Space Will Freak You Out. And this book is filled with amazingly, it's already on the screen. Why am I doing this? If you look up there, it's filled with these amazing illustrations that are funny and light and come together in ways that will bring you joy. And while it's written for middle level, I think any of you can enjoy this story. So Megan, Kimerly, it's wonderful to have both of you on today. Welcome. How are you doing from your two opposite coasts here in the United States?
We're doing well, thank you. I think Megan's enjoying her weather more than I am because I'm in the deep freeze. I
Yeah.
haven't seen the sun in about a month, but we're doing really
Oh,
well.
Yes. Thank you for having us, Pamela. It's always a joy to be able to speak with you and your audience.
and I have to say, it's good to have things that are so full of joy when talking to the two of you. You're both at the Chandra Center at the Harvard and Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. So you are ground zero for all that is new and weird in our space ecosystem. And this is a story of joy with this book. And um, today I want to focus mostly on this book, but I also want to talk to you about what's next with Chandra as you begin releasing things from the archive and continue to find new ways to bring us science. But first, this is your first middle level book, I believe.
It is. It is. We've written a handful of books or half a dozen books. I don't know if we lost count over the years about different topics, that have sort of been inspired to some degree or another by our day job with Chandra in the sense that, we did a book on light, for example, because everyone would say, well, why do you need an X-ray telescope? That was one of the,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because, if you're in the business, you're like, oh, of course you do, because you need all the different kinds of light to make a complete picture.
Uh-huh.
But for, normies out there who aren't, in the astronomy world, you think you have one kind of telescope, that's enough. So, with this book, it's a little bit further afield from our normal stuff in the sense that we wanted to talk to younger readers in a way that we haven't before. We both have kids, and
Yeah.
we know that kids and adults like to get freaked out, grossed out, sort of, a little bit of scary, but, maybe not too scary for a younger reader. So we wanted to sort of be a little bit contrarian to all the books you see about how glorious space is and how wonderful it is. And it is, don't get me wrong. But our goal was to sort of be a little counterintuitive. And, what if we did a book about like the worst places in space that we could freak you out or smell bad or scare you or whatever. So that's, the combination of our kids and our interests and just wanting to do something a little bit different kind of led to this book.
Yeah, and I really enjoy doing something so different because I'm more of like a rainbow and puppy dogs type of person, but my family has a very sort of dark sense of humor, loves scary things. Halloween's the favorite. So this book as like a Lemony Snicket kind of, vibe for the universe was a lot of fun because it was just so different, right? And I think there's a lot of stuff out there that seems scary. There are actual phobias about the universe. I
Yes.
think one's like cosmophobia. There's like a phobia about stars. There's a phobia about like complete darkness, the unknown, like the vastness of space, right? So I think it's kind of interesting to just think about like the great beyond from us and just play with that, all of those dark things, but bring it in a way that's very approachable. I mean, I don't think we'll keep anybody up at night with these stories, but it's just an interesting approach.
I I loved the way you approached all of this with humor. The one that got me, and of course I have to now share it on camera as best I can, uh, is the rotten egg approach to looking at Io. First of all, don't smell Io. Don't lick space. There's just not enough atmosphere. You will die in the process. But that title to the section brings home the fact that the universe is smelly. The universe, if we could take our helmets off and not die, again, do not take your helmet off, um, would would have all these different characteristics that would affect all of our different senses. And that's not something that comes up very often. Do you find that with kids taking this multisensory approach has a better impact than just going, oh, look at the shinies?
I mean, I can start by saying I think that one of the things that I hope people will get from this book, even if they're not fully realizing, especially kids, is that we often have this otherness of space. And
Yeah.
obviously, like, space is different in that it's far away and there's not a lot of air and, all these things.
Yeah.
But there is, I think it's important to realize that we're part of space, right? And so the same experiences we have here on Earth or the same senses we use could be used modified, right? With if things in space, if you were to encounter them, if you're able to get into a spaceship and go there and take your helmet off and not die, all those things, there would be these sensory experiences that you could relate to because again, our Earth is part of a bigger cosmic ecosystem, and that's part of why we wanted to sort of make it relatable through these, somewhat scary things that really hopefully won't keep people up at night. But then, of course, there's that pun, of course, well, we do want you to keep people up at night so they go out and look at the stars. But, like you want to make sure that things are relatable in a way that's, engaging and maybe a little bit like against the grain, but not too scary. At least that was our hope.
Yeah. And for me, at least, like, being sort of in tune with all the senses is just always something to do. Like, I remember
Yeah.
when I was learning how to drive, when I was like, 15 and a half, and my dad was teaching me how to drive, he always used to teach me to like use all of your senses when you're driving your car. Listen to your car, smell what's going on. Like, do you have gas leaking? Do you have an oil leak? Right? What are you seeing? What are you feeling on the steering wheel? Right? Like, that was something that's kind of been ingrained in me since I was young. And it's something that we've applied to our work on the gender side to use your senses. We have things where you can listen to science data, where you can hold a tactile 3D printed model, right? That's kind of always been part of our work life, if you will. And so for this type of book, kind of extending it into thinking about what things would smell like and what that could taste like, it's just a fun additional way. We certainly do not talk about smell and taste in our day job. So being able to
Yes.
think about those types of fun aspects it was such a joy with this book. This book was so much fun to write. I mean, I always have a good time writing with Megan, but this book in particular was so much.
Me too.
So, one of the things that folks have noticed with me recording Astronomy Cast is I am full of joy when discussing things that could destroy the planet Earth. It's horrible. It's the way I am. We recently did an episode on when comets and asteroids attack, and Fraser kept joking that my supervillain destiny was showing. You have created a book that is a primer for places that you could go build your super villain fort out in space that are evil and awful and terrible, or a great resource, quite accidentally, I suspect, for science fiction writers looking for terrible planets to attempt to put humans on. Which brings me to the fact that you have created a book, two astrophysicist people who focus a lot on high energy astronomy that is more than half planetary science. How is it that you found the freakiest places in space were mostly planetary?
I mean, I feel like science fiction writers have been, I don't know, really dreaming up these wild places,
Yeah,
right, for so many years. If you think about the Star Trek and the Star Wars world
yeah,
building, and so many other authors that have contributed to the sci-fi universe, if you will. That for us, at least, we do some exoplanet work on the Tinder side, but not nearly to the extent that we got to do with this book, which was
yeah,
what was so much fun. Like we really did get to dive into that sort of world building of the scary universe that finding all of these unique places that researchers have found exist, right? Like you can think of back to Star Trek and Star Wars and some of those weird worlds that they created, and scientists find worlds that are very similar, a Tatooine like planet that's super dry with multiple suns. Yeah, that's not all that unusual, presumably, right?
right.
Water worlds, lava worlds, like these places have been found to very, very likely exist. And so it was fun to dive into those unique, strange little places.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that, I think one of the reasons why there's so much planetary and exoplanet stuff in here is because that's where the science has led us, right? I mean, there's so many cool places that astronomers have discovered. And again,
Yeah,
we're not at the stage yet where we're getting images, direct images of these places, or sending probes into, these really weird exoplanets. However, it's kind of, I always think it's fascinating, even though it's not part of the day job, that scientists can take data from our telescopes, which are millions or billions or trillions of miles away from these
yeah,
things, and then through, again, the light that they receive, they can reconstruct what's going on these planets. They can reconstruct temperature and atmosphere and density. So what, is it rocky or not? Like where is it in an orbit? And then from that, you can tell a data-based story of what could be happening on these really distant worlds. And that's all science-based. I mean, we wanted to make a book that had a very light, well, dark tone to it, but it's all based on, but all the science that's in here is real. So that was really important to us. So I mean, like, I think this is one of these cases where science is weirder than maybe what my imagination can come up with, right? And that's really fun. And like we wanted to show and share that with people that, you know, the universe is really freaky in like the best way possible, in my mind at least. It has all these different things that you might not even imagine was possible. So that's kind of and then of course there's other things that are not planetary, which
yeah.
are equally interesting. But like, I think that, it's really the science of the past 3 decades of exoplanet research that kind of drove that part of the story for us because there's so many cool things.
And what's really cool is you worked with an illustrator, which, as two of the top people I think of when I think of who's out there with their finger on what is great in imagery. You worked with an illustrator who brought to life all of these things that we only see through either time series plots or spectral graphs. And by working with an illustrator, each of these different worlds was able to gain a surface, to gain a personality. Did that knowledge that you'd be working with an illustrator, and I have to give props to Robert Ball for just over and over bringing it home with this remarkable illustrations of just the kinds of features I truly love with lava worlds and such. Um, did knowing you were working with an illustrator in any way shape how you made the choices you made?
Well, I would say that because of our day job and working with, invisible forms of light, like
Yeah,
our second language probably is in that idea of translating something you can't see into something you can. And illustration is a really complementary way of being able to take something that we really can't get the best image of, say, right? Or something that's only spectral still, right?
yeah.
And translating that into something a step forward. And so having the combination, like we have NASA and other images in the book, of course,
Oh
because
yeah.
that's my happy place for sure. But when you can't, right? And also, like for kids, the important aspect was to really help world build with them, right? So to get their creativity and their imagination kind of going. And so working with him on this book and those illustrations was just so fun because he had a great sort of language to being able to create what I think the book really needed to give it that extra like oomph of personality.
It really is beautiful. Megan.
And I was going to say that, I want to just, give some props to all the astronomical illustrators that are out there because it's a whole field of people
Yeah.
that do such amazing work that they do this different kind of translation than what I usually do with words or even what we normally do with images. Like there's, where you're taking something that's really hard to wrap your mind around, and the illustrations are so important in order to, continue to fill in the gaps of the story between words and images and around, sort of wraps everything up. And I think that I'm gonna probably sound ancient, but like in this world with a lot of AI slop, like there are
Yeah.
so many great artists who are out there who are doing original work on science, data-driven projects that get it right. And I think that,
Yes.
we were lucky enough that we work with these people for our day job, but it was really a treat to work with someone like that for this book as well. And it's really it's an art and a professional thing that is truly I'm in awe of when people can do this stuff.
One of the things that I find myself saying a lot discussing science news is our field is in many ways progressing at both the rate of technological advances, new telescopes, new supercomputers, but also at the rate of creativity. Because at a certain level, we keep finding the universe did the kinds of things that when we were young and didn't have enough data, we didn't think the universe would do. And to keep trying to figure out how to understand the new data coming in, we have to be creative. And illustration has a way of triggering imagination in ways that plots don't. And and this really reminds me of something that inspired me when I was young and actually allows me quite inadvertently to plug next week's episode. We're going to have astro artist Bill Hartman, William Hartman, on to discuss his science, which includes the great impactor hypothesis for the formation of the moon, as well as his illustration that was influential to me when I was in middle school. And this ability to get people dreaming is such an important thing. Do you see with your own children, with the children you work with through various programs, do you see them illustrating as well as communicating through words and homework assignments the universe that we share?
Well, I think, if we are only becoming a more increasingly visual society, right? I
Yes.
think this generation of kids, obviously they're exposed to a lot more, and there's different ways for them to get access to images and illustrations. So I think that they very much are influenced by these visuals, and that to me is why it's even more important that we're putting things out responsibly. And like, we in our day job, but in this book, we are very much committed to making sure that it's clear when this is an illustration, an artist's conception,
Yes.
versus an image, because a lot of times on the internets these days, it's like it's not clear, and
Yeah.
that to me, that's sort of a pet peeve of mine because they're both important,
Yeah.
and it's like you want to know the difference, and you want to state the difference, and so people can know the difference. So I think it's really important. We are just awash with imagery, and we want to make sure that the images that we are tied to are conveying the right thing, and it's not misleading, or it's not incorrect, or it's not, So I think it has a huge role in how people understand and process information today, especially younger people.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say 100% it's like a visual literacy. And that differentiation between data and illustration is important. And earlier, Megan, you mentioned like the AI slop, like in the current generation, being able to learn the differences between AI generated material versus non-generated material is also really important, right? So like that idea of visual literacy is so huge, absolutely huge right now. And my kids are a little bit older, so they grew up like before the AI, you know,
Yeah.
absolute rainfall. But they grew up loving illustrated books and
Yes.
comics and all of that, anime, all of that stuff. And so it was definitely for me, again, like really so great just to be able to dip back into those worlds that I had spent a lot of time with them on when they were younger. And so I do hope like kids really get and enjoy that this book is just very multifaceted with that. You can enjoy the images, you can enjoy the illustrations, you can enjoy the world building through or otherwise.
And it really does trigger the imagination. And some of your turns of phrase to make things freaky brought me joy. The Eta Carina Nebula, the homunculus, it is one of my favorite stories, both because suddenly a star became significantly brighter. It went from the Adath to one of the brightest stars in the sky like that. And every new telescope brings us new and remarkable data about what all is in the heart of that nebula in terms of the number of stars and everything else. And you made an analogy I had never seen before by comparing it to a brain. And now I will never unsee that. And
Yeah.
and how did
I
you
just have to
brain?
say, Megan, so I came in first with Space Croissant, and Megan's like, no, Space Brain. I was like, you win. Like, you win. It
Yes.
was so perfect, and I absolutely love that analogy.
Well, I feel like it's like one of those like, bad science fiction, not bad, old school science fiction movies from like the 50s where it's like
Uh-huh.
there's a giant space brain, it's gonna come eat you, like that kind of
Yeah.
it kind of, but it don't, to me it looks like a brain. It always has. So I whatever. But it's yeah, it is a fun thing. Again, if you were to tell like a science fiction writer, oh, there's this system and it's it has these giant eruptions and it could blow up in any second. Like it seems like that's like the backdrop for like a good, Star Trek movie or whatever.
Yeah.
And like so, but again, space has already made this for us. Like it's already there. We don't have to even have that much of an imagination to like describe it because it's already so weird and cool and like and a little scary if you're near it. But whatever. Like most of the time we're fine. But like so that was the other line we tried to walk. We wanted to walk a line where we were telling them about things that were scary, but like honestly, there's so much going on in the world right now. We
Yeah.
didn't want to be too dark. We didn't want to give anyone any new phobias. We didn't want
Hmm.
to make anyone, especially kids, like really get freaked out.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to make it sound like it because at Karina, we're safe. It
Yes.
might be a really cool light show at some point, but it's not going to blow us to smithereens.
Right.
But so we tried to make that. We tried at least to walk that line.
And honestly, one of the things that I have been finding is that when the world goes dark, suddenly it's a whole lot easier to face things like asteroid impacts as possibilities, which admittedly is exceedingly dark and not
You're
something
like,
you
well,
should
you're like,
say
come
to your
on,
middle layer. um, but but the timing of this is such that I think it creates an amazing distraction. I'm going to a science fiction writers workshop in a couple of weeks, and I'm actually going to take this with me because one of the things I've been brainstorming with an author I science advise for is various objects that fit into his stories, and I want to just like kind of leave this out there as, hey, there's this stuff in the universe that you should be including. And one of the things that I often think about is there needs to be a website with like what is the weirdest stuff astronomy has just come out with because somebody needs to be writing stories about this stuff. And with everything you do over at Chandra, trying to get the world to see the universe through multi-messenger astronomy, through all the different spacecraft, through all the different particles and waves. Do you ever think we need to be collecting this stuff in one place? I mean, clearly you wrote a book of collecting these things in one place, but then encouraging people to dream about this stuff. You can say
Great
no. This is
question.
just a
Yeah,
like this is something I want to do.
I love that because it kind of gets me thinking of like a science art exchange site,
Right.
right? Where you can like find those resources that you need in order to do your own world building creative expressions and all of that.
Yeah.
There's definitely good size repositories on the various like mission websites and
Yeah.
all that. But as far as like one cohesive, like here's all of the incredible stuff happening right now, I definitely think the best you'll find is the NASA.gov website. And
Right.
obviously Google can help partition things together. But it is hard because there is a lot of different kinds of research going on. And so you can't really find one place for all of that, you know?
And
Yeah, I mean, I think that, for this book, for example, like part of the material, most of the material came from, just kind of being in this profession and
mhm,
then, seeing something and like throwing it in an email folder, like I'll get back to that because it's so cool and so
yes.
weird. And like it's not in my field exactly, but like that's just such a neat thing to learn about. So I'll, one day come back to it. Because you're right, there's no place where you can just find like sort of holistically, mission agnostically, agency, it doesn't matter. Um, it would be great to have that.
Yeah, writing
Mhm.
prompts, not necessarily like I mean, yeah, there's all the cool discoveries coming out, but the idea that you could be hanging out on a planet and all the different ways things go supernova. There was a absolutely devastating, do not read it if you are not in an emotionally healthy place. Arthur C. Clarke short story uh, for Christmas about the Star of Bethlehem being a supernova that destroyed a planet that had a civilization on it. And they were aware their world was going to die. And so on the outermost planet in their solar system, they recorded all of the information they could about their civilization before it was lost. And like that is such a devastating story. Do not read that for Christmas, people. But it's also an amazing writing prompt. What would happen to a civilization when they realize their star is going to go supernova? So sorry. These are the things that I apparently think about when I've had 3 cups of coffee and then have 2 creative people on the show. Um, so working with Chandra, you've both been there for a couple of decades, and
Yes.
Yes, we have.
Yes.
We're almost at three.
Yeah. It's picking up. It's.
Yeah.
and this is a mission that is still, for the most part, doing really well. Um, and funding willing can keep going into the future. Does it surprise you that one, it's still finding new ways to discover amazing things, and two, it has garnered so much support from the public over these years?
I mean, I
I
think.
mean,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Should I go?
Go
Okay.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll just say, I mean, for me, it's been the thrill of a career to be able to capture like this moment that we've had over the past almost 30 years,
Yeah.
right? Where these discoveries have been happening at such a pace that it's amazing. Like that, the
Yes.
first exoplanets that were discovered just as Megan and I were coming onto the scene. It was like for me a couple years earlier, and then as Chandra was being built, like some of those discoveries had already happened, and yet Chandra contributes really beautifully to
Yeah.
exoplanet research by being able to understand the temper tantrum or not temper tantrum that parent star is having and the possible effects that it could have on any planetary bodies around it, right? That's just
Right.
an example. And so, all of those types of things, like the same thing with like black hole research, like never did I think we would get to see the first image of a black hole shadow or silhouette. Like in my lifetime, I didn't expect it.
Right.
But Chandra has worked in such great synchronicity with the Event Horizon Telescope because you can look really close at that black hole. But to me, what's super interesting about black holes is what trouble they may be causing around them, right? All the environment that's around that black hole kind of tells you the coolest story of what's happening and what you get as a result. And that's the view that Chandra really provides. And so it's been such a thrill to watch all of those evolutions in our technology and the incredible, brilliant minds behind all of that research, and see this telescope, an X-ray telescope, being able to not just keep up, but truly contribute and be like a, telescope leader, if you will, in that type of area. So I don't know. I really cannot imagine when I first started working for Chandra, like if you would have told me that this would be the next almost 30 years, I don't think I would have believed it, because it has surpassed my expectations in every way.
And I just think it's a testimony to the people who designed and built and have operated this telescope since, way back when it was still a concept in the
Yeah.
the
In
first
the late
proposal for the
70s.
telescope was in
Hmm.
66, I think. So are we at 50 years of since the original proposal went to NASA, and then they built this thing, and they were building and designing in the 80s, and then 90s it actually starts to come together. And so you've had people who work on this project, and for decades. And here's the
Yeah.
thing: it's 1990s technology, and it's survived in the harshness of space. There's no servicing. There's no like go swap out something new and plug in, a new component. It is living off of the technology and the hardware and the software that we can update a little bit, but like you're talking like sending up an IBM PC Junior and like hoping it's going to be fine in space. And so I think it's one of these things. I know the new administrator at NASA talks about doing the near impossible. I would put Chandra in that category. I think it's really a very amazing accomplishment for
Yes.
humanity. I mean, and this is the kind of thing that NASA can do and other agencies can do
Yes.
too. But like NASA I think it's a success story, any way you look at it. And then it's still going. They've had to, tweak things here and there to keep things, running optimally. But it is still all these years later, and it's still making discoveries, which I think is
Yes.
so cool.
I mean, we're clearly biased, but I
Yeah, I know.
100%
This is it.
agree.
We are not we're not independent here, but
Yeah.
we see what it does
No,
all
but
the
it's
time, and
it's true. It's
yeah.
true. Like the fact that, all of the brilliant engineers and scientists and technicians that work on Chandra, like just keep Chandra going by sending up code, right? Like that
Right.
is how that they manage to work with this telescope that goes a third of the way to the moon.
Yeah.
And they do a brilliant job at it.
Yeah.
And we have this gorgeous, gorgeous, rich, deep archive over, 26, 27 years as a result. And that's amazing.
The thing that gets me the most about the programmers, I could never work on software for a space telescope because I've written software that has attempted to completely fill my hard drive, that has done otherwise bad things to my operating system. Um, and I think every programmer has at one point or another not missed a bug in all of their testing because reality has edge cases that, again, we're not creative enough to come up with. And Chandra has just worked flawlessly from the software perspective. And that is one of the most amazing things is they are working in what is now esoteric legacy systems to constantly improve things and add new functionality, and they're not bricking your telescope. It's,
Yes.
I mean, may
Yes,
they
there's
never.
actually a test system at our control center that's built up of like all these old parts that we've had to source on eBay because they're so old, right? And like it's just cobbled together as this full test system so that things can be run and experimented on for that exact reason. And it is just awesome. It is
Yeah.
absolutely awesome. And it's still to this day like the most high resolution X-ray telescope. So it gives us a view of the universe that we absolutely need.
And
And
no
I will
one's
say,
planning a new one.
oh, they're
Well,
planning new
there's
ones. Yeah,
Okay,
plans
no
and
one's
hopes.
funding a
Yes.
new one.
not yet. There are hopes and dreams and all of
Yeah.
that, and there's lots of ideas on what should come next in X-ray astronomy. But what in the meantime, what is just to build on what Kim said, Chandra is the only X-ray telescope that's up right now and will be operating, for the near future, years or whatever, that can be ready and able to complement what Roman's going to see, what
Right.
Ruben's going to see, like these giant, floods of data that are going to be so important. but there's going to be certain things that they are going to need the X-ray diagnostic on
Yes.
to know what really they're looking at. So if you don't have a telescope like Chandra, then you can't get the full answer of some of these things. And so, not only has Chandra survived, and I would say thrived this many years, it has a future going forward
Yes.
that's super important. And I think the people that have worked on Chandra and continue to work on Chandra have prepared it for that future, even though it is an older telescope by most measures now. So, I mean, I think it's a remarkable piece of machinery, and I think, I'm proud to have worked on it for this many years, and been able to share some of those results with the public, which is what Kim and I really focus on in our day jobs.
And one of the things that Chandra has, through the work the two of you have done, really excelled at is bringing home how different wavelengths work together. One of the things that I know from my own research in grad school, radio astronomy, looking at jets and galaxy clusters, and uh, X-ray astronomy, looking at cluster environments. Um, Radio astronomy and X-ray astronomy, through so many different ways, probe galaxy cluster environments in ways nothing else can. And and as we move towards the future, there's the square kilometer array on the distant horizon, slowly moving forward, with Meerkat and other test environments already starting to get us data. There was LOFAR's discovery recently of a galaxy jet that turned on and off, and all of these things we see in the X-rays, we see in the radio, and then we see the galaxy in the optical. And you have had front row seats to all of this data coming in. I know for me, it's the radio X-ray combination that has been most shocking. For the two of you, what is it that you never quite expected that has turned out to just take your breath away?
Well, actually, I would jump on the radio bandwagon for a bit, even though we're operating typically in the daily in the X-ray high energy world.
Yeah.
I Some of my favorite images and data sets are Hercules A, Cygnus A, Centaurus A, and they have
Yes.
these gorgeous jets just streaming out of those supermassive black holes and extending throughout the galaxy. And it's so dramatic and stunning. And it is so interesting that low energy, high energy, complementary sort of space is bad pun, I guess, is like so incredible to look at. But I also have to give some huge props because I think it has been so cool to be working with the infrared data from the James Webb Space Telescope as well, because that is something. When those first few images started coming out, I was so excited to work with those pieces of data and seeing again how Chandra and Webb can complement each other so much. Gary's star formation, for example, you see those clouds of diffuse gas and so beautiful. And then you'll see those gorgeous, stellar formation structures in the infrared wrapping around them like a hug, right?
Yes.
It's just there's so much beautiful complementary science that's done. And really, you're kind of doing the work for us, drives the point home of why you need these different kinds of light. Each little one is a different tool out of the tool belt to be able to answer a different question, to provide a different point of view, to be able to show a different part of this incredible universe. So it's pretty amazing.
I mean, I always go back to the analogy of notes on a piano keyboard. And I think you have each wavelength is kind of like a few notes in different parts of an octave, and you play them differently, and you can create beautiful music, these chords that you could only play by playing them together. And if
Yes.
different combinations leads to different beautiful music. And I think that, with radio, all the way from radio to X-ray and everything in between, you can put these things together and you get what to me seems like a complete picture. And if you have sometimes just one of those wavelengths, while still beautiful, it's not complete. And so for me, like some of my favorite ones over the years, one of them has to be the galactic center. I think that that's just because that's our Milky Way, that's our
Yeah.
home. And just seeing so many different wavelengths, including Chandra, but like radio, you put those things together, you stack them together, and it's so awesome. I mean, and of course, then my other thing to throw out there would be supernova remnants because, excuse me, those are It's something we do a lot with Chandra in an X-ray, but you get all sorts of different views, and those are our, stellar ancestors, so to speak, and those are where, the stuff we are made of come from. And so to see them in their full glory with all these different kinds of light, it's still mind blowing to me after all these years.
Yes. Yeah, I have to admit my favorite discovery so far is there was a paper, I think in December, on there was a gravitational wave discovery that looked like two neutron stars merging, but one of them was somehow like solar mass, which made absolutely no sense. And while they were trying to figure out what that makes no sense, they looked to see if they could see the kilonova, and they saw a point of light that looked like it was the kilonova, but then it transformed into what looked like a supernova, which is a different light curve. And it was all deeply confusing. And this team followed it throughout its entire evolution. And what it looks like happened was a super fast rotating, very massive star began to collapse, but it was rotating so fast that some of the neutrons formed during the collapse flung off, forming a binary neutron star during the collapse. And then those merged, released a flash of light, and supernova light comes out actually much later in the evolution of the event. And so you have first the gravitational waves, then from the kilonova merging, and the light from the kilonova, and then the light from the supernova. And this is just sort of like, how does the universe do that? Well, a binary star system, but it's just wild. And all the wavelengths were involved in things like that. And I am very glad to have a front row seat as someone who communicates science without having to be the person needing to have the creativity to come up with that kind of a story for what's being seen. And we live in an amazing time. And as you look at everything that's coming out with all these stories, the planets in this are very quickly going to get replaced with other even creepier and freakier planets. Are you planning on a sequel? What comes next?
We'll see.
You're the best question asker ever. A sequel would be the absolute most wonderful thing to do. But it depends on how people like it, I suppose. I think there's plenty of material in the universe, for sure, to write a lot more scary, weird, oddball types of stories. So
yeah, I think you just proved our point, which is that the universe writes these stories itself. I mean, we just have to be there. We have to just be there to collect them. And I think there's plenty to write about. And hopefully, we're just reflecting back on what the universe is doing, and we can get other people who aren't neck deep in this stuff to be like, oh, wow, that's really interesting, and learn something new on their own, after putting our book down. So
that is awesome. And I have unfortunately, I left what may be the most difficult question for the very end. Both of you have been deeply involved in creating astronomy tools that allow people of varying abilities to be able to comprehend images, even if they're visually impaired. And one of the most deeply confusing things about seeing this book on Amazon was there's an audiobook version of this. Now, it's not released yet, so I couldn't download it to listen to it. Did you get to do the alt text for all the images, or are they just like ignored? Or how did you do an audiobook of this? Or how did your publisher?
Well, we didn't do it.
Yeah.
The publisher did it.
Have you got to hear it yet?
We haven't heard it yet, actually.
Oh, man.
We haven't heard it. We had to provide pronunciations and that kind of light guidance. So that was it. So we haven't heard it yet. I don't actually know how it's come out.
Okay.
I was very excited because I don't think we've written, I think this is our book 9. Book 9? Yeah. So I think out of all those books, I don't think we've ever had anything in audiobook form because they're all often so very visual. But this book, because the words really start the story, right. I think there was a unique opportunity for those words to really just be the gift, right, of that audiobook. And so that, I think, is the tack they were taking. But That was up to our publisher.
We will be as interested to hear how it turns out as you are. I mean,
Well,
so
I will be downloading it. It comes out in 4 days. We are recording this on February 6th. The book comes out on Amazon and everywhere else on February 10th. We have links to it in the YouTube description. And I love that there is such a regular cadence of new and beautiful things coming out from the two of you. And I really appreciate your ability to mix science and joy as you fill our bookshelves and now our ears with beautiful and joyful things. What parting thoughts would you want to leave for people?
Megan, you want to start?
sure. I mean, I guess I just want to encourage people to find what does give them joy and what gives them, you know, what interests them, and to pursue that in whatever form that takes. I want people ideally to, this is a book about space, and we're at a juncture in our society where I feel like, you know, it's nice for people to have a chance to immerse themselves in something where there's a bit of a distraction, but yet it's based in science and is a fact-filled, data-driven kind of experience. And so I want people to realize that you can have fun, but you can also learn at the same time. And keep driving for truth, and whatever truth that might be for you or the people out there and have fun doing it if they can.
Yeah. And for me, I would just say, like, I mean, I heart the universe, right? The universe makes me feel small. The universe makes me feel insignificant. The universe makes me feel humble. It really is incredible, like how when you think of things beyond yourself, it just provides a whole other window, both into the universe, but also kind of reflects back on yourself. And so I just absolutely encourage folks to just kind of keep dreaming, keep thinking, keep feeling small. It's actually a really fun place to be. I don't know why I enjoy it so much, but I really do. And though I'm usually more puppies and rainbows, as I said, like I've really enjoyed kind of getting into that darker, sort of humorous side of things, and hopefully some other folks can kind of build their own stories from that.
And it's important to remember there could be lava monsters out there who thrive and consider it as happy and beautiful as a warm bath.
Exactly. Love their lava.
Love their
Exactly.
lava. All right. This has been a wonderful conversation. I love having the two of you on. I cannot wait to see what you create next. And all of you out there, get a copy. I say this as a book reviewer, not as their friend. Although I would say it as both. This just like, it's good to dream. And it's written for middle level, but like so many YA stories, it's great for adults. So get yourselves a copy. All
Thank
right.
you, Pamela.
Thank you. And thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Pamela. Thank you so much for having us on.
It's my pleasure. It's always my pleasure. All right. Thank you, everyone. Next week, we will be joined by Bill Keel, not Bill Keel. Next week, we'll be joined by Bill Hartman. He is a planetary scientist, one of the founders of the Planetary Science Institute, and he's a space artist whose books I have carried around with me move after move since I was 12 years old, because they meant that much to me. And I'm super pleased to also have him come on. Find joy, chase it. That's what we're doing with this show this semester, and we hope you will be back. And I will have both of you back as soon as you have a new book or a new amazing discovery from Chandra. Thank you,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.